Why is it so hard to break into data science? Well, it's because one of the biggest myths in data science is the data science and machine learning learning path. Everyone wants one, and there are tons of people who offer one out there. But the problem with data science, and this is true not only of data science, but of a number of different emerging roles, you can have all the capabilities. You can check all the boxes from a skills perspective and still not be capable of doing the job. That's why there's no learning path, because I can tell you all the skills you need. I can tell you what you need to build. But in order to be able to connect the dots, to be capable, to have data science capabilities, you need a process that takes any number of different types of business problems and creates a solution. Now, boot camps, colleges, everything will give you a workflow, but that's not the same thing as a process. Why? Because the workflow isn't going to always be the same. From business problem to business problem, you are going to have to adapt everything from code to math to fit the particular business problem. You're going to have to customize because very simple problems are what you get presented in your education. And you get thrown a couple of curves here and a couple of curves there. And all of that is meant to reinforce your skills. But it does not turn those skills into capabilities. It is meant to reinforce a workflow. However, that workflow doesn't always apply step by step to every single situation. And so you need a process to evaluate whatever business problem you're facing. More times than not, it's poorly defined. You don't get all of the details that you need up front. And so your workflow is going to depend heavily. And a lot of times your workflow is cyclical. You'll stop at 2 steps and go back and forth and back and forth. And you need a process to understand when you need to do that, when you're actually done, when is it good enough? Because it's never perfect. So when's it good enough? Is it the right answer? Remember, your model learns a function. You don't know that function ahead of time. If you did, you could just write code for it. I mean, let's be real. You could just do normal software development if you knew the function that your model was going to learn in the first place. It's too complex for you to define out in a logical way that you can code up. That's why you need a model. But that means that when the model's built, you have to get really, really intelligent and dive into the functionality of the model and how it works and what contributes to the inference that's served in a number of different categorical situations. And that's not a workflow. You don't know what the answer is. How do you know what to do if you don't know if it's the correct answer? So you've got a trained model, and it's basically looking at you like, all right, so was that the right answer? And you're looking at it like, I don't really know. I'm going to have to individually review circumstances and cases and test, and it's not a workflow. So this is why there is no such thing as a data science and machine learning path. It doesn't exist. Anyone that tells you it does is only giving you the piece of the puzzle that's easiest to teach. And that's why you see that in a lot of boot camps and cheat sheets and tutorials and college curriculum even. It's because that process is really, really hard to teach. It is hard. And especially if you are not a practitioner trying to teach a class to data scientists that goes beyond basic skills, foundational concepts, all of which are important. But if you want to get hired in the field, you need a course of study that goes into that process, that begins to teach you more than just a workflow of steps, but a process to figuring out how to go from business problem to actual solution, to a reliable model that can be deployed in production and makes the company money. That's a different process because it requires a synthesis of all of those skills and some improvisation on your part, but intelligently. You can't just go down randomly this path and that path, or it's going to take you forever. It really takes too long to just brute force your way through it. So you have to add some level of experience and intelligence to determine what part of this process you should be following and what processes can be maybe pushed to the background because you don't have time and they won't really affect the final product. And how do you test that it didn't? How do you make sure that your assumptions are not going to come back to bite you? All of that requires you to put in your own experience, requires you to be able to take all those skills and turn them into capabilities. That's hard to teach. You cannot just exercise your way through that. So, schools and boot camps have a hard time giving you a learning path because there's that undefined component of building the process that allows you to apply your capabilities to real-world problems. It's hard to define. And if you look at the way businesses interview people, they're doing their best to figure out, okay, so you've got knowledge of, are you capable? Do you have that process? Can you generalize your knowledge, all of these foundational concepts to problems you've never seen before, and nuances that require a level of intelligence and improvisation in many cases to get an actual solution built in a timely fashion. So there's no learning path. I'm sorry. I know you want one, but I'd be lying to you. And unfortunately, a lot of people do. They lie to you and tell you all you have to have is the skills. And then you get into the interview and you realize it's more than just being able to answer questions about statistics and model architectures and frameworks and code. You get the sense the interviewers are looking for something else. They're listening for your process. Because data science requires that additional capability. And without it, like I said, you can have all the skills, you can check all the boxes, and you may not be capable of doing data science. And so as you're learning, that means you have to change your mindset. Forget the learning path, because it's not a straight line. And so you're not going to go from course to course to course to course, from lesson 1 to lesson 2 to lesson 3. You're not going to go that way. Much like doing data science, the journey of learning data science is sometimes cyclical because you have an outcome in mind, and that's getting hired. The reason why companies hire you, the real outcome that you're looking for, is because you're capable of doing data science. You can build models that are reliable. They get to production. They produce value. That's what you're trying to learn how to do. So stop looking at it as trying to learn statistics or trying to learn linear algebra or trying to learn deep learning, whatever that is, or trying to learn any of these other components of code. And stop. SQL, stop. So just stop. Yes, you need all of that. But if you learn them in isolation, you don't get the process. If you just learn a workflow, yeah, it's not the same every single time. So it's not a straight line. You're learning for purpose, not to be able to pass a test. Passing a test is meaningless. You're not learning to be able to train, test, validate, and write the code behind that. That's not the purpose of learning how to write code. You're learning to produce that final, reliable model that is valuable. And so that's your learning path. When you can do that, you're done. So it's more complicated than you probably want it to be. But hey, at least now you know the truth. And I think that's the only way you can move forward and be successful in the field, is if you know that this is kind of ugly. There's hairy spots that you have to figure out and navigate on your own. But there's a lot of experienced people out there who will help you with this process. However, avoid the trap of anyone giving you the cheat sheet, the tutorial, the learning path. I give you a basic skills learning path, and I think it's extraordinarily important to understand the foundational concepts. But even as I'm giving you a data science and machine learning path, I'm telling you, you're going to have to do. Yes, you need the foundations, but if you don't do, you're not going to build capabilities. You're not going to train and hone your process. You're just going to continually bang your head against the skills wall and never get anywhere. You're going to try to get hired and companies are just going to be like, That's because you're focused on some sort of myth. So there's the truth. Focus on the objective. It's the destination. That's where you want to be. Not able to pass a statistics test that will not give you the capabilities that companies are looking for. So, foundational concepts, oh yes, but practical know-how, capability. You got to build something. And if you are not as part of this learning journey, putting things together and being able to build more complex, more valuable, if that's not the objective, you're never going to get into data science. You're going to have an amalgamation of skills, and your journey into the field is going to be painful. So, process, results, process, outcomes, process, results, process, outcomes. That's it. That's your learning path. Good luck.